names in this, and because it's a list, right? It is a list. So I want to thank also all of our executive committee trustees, Queen James, who's here, and others who's here, and Isaac, for being a part of this conversation this evening as well. And so I'm going to ask Katie to come up and introduce herself, and then we will get some. We'll throw it over to Monk. He'll establish the ground rules, and we'll go from there.
Thank you for coming out, everybody. I'm Katie with Garfield Park Neighborhoods Association. We are so pleased, so thankful to the Center for Community Transformation for hosting us tonight, and for the NAACP for letting us join forces with them for this important community conversation. The last couple of years have taught us that elections matter, and this year, even the primary matters. So we're here to just encourage all of you to take in what you're hearing and to vote on August 6th.
All right, once again, thank you all for being here at the Grand Rapids Center for Community Transformation for this 2024 mayoral conversation. So we'll lay some ground rules down. It's real simple. This is not a debate, this is a conversation. So we're not looking for folks to attack each other or anything like that. For our next conversation. And I'll be moderating, so I'll just be trying to keep us on track. We tend to slip off track a little bit. And the facilitation of this event will be by these amazing young people right here, the NAACP Youth Fellows. So let's give them a hand. And we'll turn it over to the Youth Fellows. They will introduce themselves, and then they will go directly into the questions. All right, all ready for this? They did not get the questions ahead of time either, so let's go.
All right, my name is Imani Ellsworth. I'm a student at Central Michigan University, and I am part of the NAACP's Youth Fellows Program. And I just want to say thank you all for coming out tonight.
Hello, I'm Benjamin Johnson. I work with the Greater Grand Rapids NAACP. Thank you all for coming out. Everybody, I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Hello, I'm James Stovall. I'm a student at Kellersville High School, and I'm really excited to have this conversation tonight.
All right, let's go ahead and jump into it, shall we? This is for all the candidates, starting with Haley going on down. How will you involve community members in identifying and solving local problems?
Well, I think a lot of the community already knows the local problems, so I would just encourage them to come to us to begin with.
I have a whole rant here, so there's a slightly longer answer. So many of you know that I was 7 years in Lansing, and also on school board, and also on city commission. I've observed, so I spent a lot of time observing how decision making happens by elected officials, and far too often there's a dynamic where an elected official or a group of elected officials will get together, sort of a group, 3 or 4 or 5 or 20 people, go into a room, decide something, and then come out and try to sell it. Well, that's not democracy, that's marketing. So if we really believe in democracy, if we really believe that every single voice counts, not just the voices of people who have time to come to something like this in the evening, or of people who have time to come to fundraisers and the money to come to fundraisers, or who have the time to run for office. If you really believe that every vote counts and every voice counts, then I think that process has to be flipped on its head. So what I am hoping to do if I win the election is have essentially a permanent rolling town hall. I'm calling them provisionally Mayor's Mondays. And what I want to do is take the big policy lifts in the community and go around the community on those policy lifts and start at one, say policing, and spend 1 month on community. And then the next month, work on housing and let anybody come and talk, because that's really, so the question is, how do you get broader participation? And that's an idea. That's the best idea I've got at the moment. I'm happy to hear more ideas because I was just talking with someone earlier before the forum. The internal dilemma of democracy is once people start engaging and start getting to a position where they thought things through and where they've got a certain access to decision making, how do they make sure that they keep going back to square one and making sure that everybody is listened to? So that's got a fancy word for that is iterative, but I think we have to do that again and again and again. We have to talk about our decision making on the front end robustly, and then solidify a solution. And far too often in politics, there's a decision made that then gets sold. So roving town hall is my first crack response to this. Was what I hope to spend basically every Monday doing, is having a standing town hall talking about this.
Okay, thank you. One ground rule I forgot to also add early on is we're gonna try to keep each answer to a limit of 2 minutes. And we're keeping track, so that's pretty close. Pretty good. Good job.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anita Lanier, and I'm so happy to be here with you all this evening. Thank you for coming out and to engage with us this evening, and thank you to the NAACP and Garfield Park Neighborhood Association for hosting us tonight, and thank you all for facilitating this. As it relates to engaging the community, I'll start with something that I've already done. While serving on the commission, one of the things that I instituted was coming to our commission meetings a half hour before the meeting started, so that anyone who wanted to have one-on-one conversations would have access to me, to ask me whatever it was that was on their heart and minds. Because frequently what happens is people don't always necessarily want to come to vent some of their personal and vulnerable stories to the public sometimes, but they also want to be heard. And so coming to the commission is sometimes a challenging thing to do. And one of the things I wanted to do is remove that barrier by coming early enough so that people can share what they wanted. Another thing that I started is I've been hosting what we're calling neighborhood connections during the campaign. And I have hosted, I'm not sure how many now, maybe 9 or 10 of them across the city, where I've gone to different places and I've posted up and invited people to come out, and then just meeting people as they're coming for coffee or coming to watch their clothes because we've been at the laundromat, or coming to bowl because we've been at bowling alleys, just to engage them to make sure that they're hearing what's on the hearts and minds of the community, because I do have some ideas and thoughts, but I think it's really important for those ideas to be merged with what's happening and what the pulse of the community is. So I institute something very similar to the neighborhood connections and there. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve Owens. So I think there's just a big disconnect between what the the city thinks people want, what people actually want, and I'll illustrate that with Orlando. So when I was in Afghanistan, all these officers, these colonels and generals, they thought it would be a good idea for us to build a soccer field for some of the Afghan locals. And as soon as we got them putting it up and drove away, they immediately took it down and used it for firewood or building material. So it just goes to show how there's a difference between what the people actually want and what the city leaders actually think people want.
This question is for all candidates. Many believe that vaping among young teenagers is an issue. How can you stop them from getting vapes?
Gosh, could you repeat the question?
This question is for all candidates. Many believe that vaping among young teenagers is an issue. How can you stop them from getting vapes?
I just think more stringent defense.
Let me start off by saying I've heard that too, but I don't know that I have received any data to support whether that's a real issue or not. But one of the things that I think would be helpful is really to engage the youth that are using vapes. I think in addition to that, engage with the health department, because I think that this is one of the issues that the health department would have interest in. And so it would be interesting to see what the data says, to see what those corrections would be in order to help you to understand the impact of it. I know that organizations like the Urban League are doing, initiatives that are tied to smoking cessation as well as menthol awareness and reduction. And so this would be another initiative that they can add to the heart of the work that they already have in place.
Okay, I'm looking at my watch. So when I was on the grammar school board, I led a movement to start using a different discipline system in the schools called restorative practices. And what restorative practices does is a lot of peer-to-peer interactions. So rather than having a top-down kick kids out, expel them model, it was a problem-solving model. A lot of the information that I have released on vaping and how people make those decisions is it's peer-based. So a 50-year-old scolding a 15-year-old about vaping is not likely to be very effective. What's much more likely to be effective is peer-to-peer interactions. And the one thing we do know about the group we talked about is they go to school. And I know we have here in Lansing, a lot of this happens in schools. And we don't want sort of police state crackdown on kids going to schools. We don't want to be searching people to look for vaping equipment. But what we do want to do is make sure that we're taking care of those kids and preparing them for long-term success. So I think that probably the most promising thing I'd say offhand would be to have a really good conversation with the folks at GRPS and other school systems about how to use a restorative-based model to try to do this. So I bet 9 times out of 10, you're going to be better at talking to somebody about vaping than I am.
As somebody who loves a good strawberry vape myself, I have no problems with it. That being said, oftentimes the reason teenagers should go to nicotine, alcohol, drugs, etc., is due to the stresses of poverty and trauma, which are inflicted on them by the social structure. We should be focusing on putting on we should be focusing on why are they stressed out enough that teens are vaping to begin with.
Just a quick follow up with the methods and information that was just mentioned. Thank you, candidates, again. How do you target vape shops and convenience stores from illegally selling vapes to minors?
Well, I don't know.
Well, the way you do that, I was surprised to hear the way you do that is you have a sting operation, and they work. And the question is how much resource you want to put into that. And those are complicated questions because I see one of our probation officers in the audience here. Sometimes you got to be careful you prioritize the things that are most concerned in the community. So I almost spend the rest of the time talking about vaping because it's frankly, I think, maybe not the biggest public policy, public safety issue we've got in the city right now.
Thank you for the follow-up question. I think that our code enforcement department could look into what are some of the practices that are existing in convenience stores that's allowing them to sell to minors illegally. And I think similar to what Davis shared is that the sting is one way in trying to address that. But I think in addition to that, I think, sometimes parents need others to help them. And if parents even have a way of sharing, this is something that my child is experiencing, it is to their detriment, can I give them support and some help? And I think that we need to have measures in place for parents to be able to have places to go and get the help that they need and support that they need for their children.
Yeah, so I think there's laws on the books already that can be used to take away their licenses, and that just goes with like sting operations, certificates, rigorous identification checks.
This is for all the candidates. Do you believe that convicted felons should lose their rights to cast the ballot? Do you think those rights will be restored?
Yeah, I think once you've made your debt to society, you should have constitutional rights restored.
So can you repeat the question again?
Do you believe that convicted felons should lose their rights to cast a ballot? Do you think those rights can be restored?
I'm not understanding what portion to cast and what?
To cast it out.
Oh, to cast it down. Oh, absolutely not. I think, one of the things that that I've been listening to a lot of the Get Out the Vote organizations around the community. They're helping to educate the community on who can vote. And so even those who may be in prison, who may be, waiting for sentencing, they have a right to vote. So just helping people to understand that they have a right. And if you are a convicted felon, you're a convicted felon, you should have the right to be able to cast a ballot in any election that you're a part of. So I think that's some of what's happening with a lot of the Get Out the Vote efforts, is helping people to know that even if you're a felon, that you can vote, and rightfully so.
So, just so everybody out there in TV land understands this is something I talked about, Jocelyn. That's, I really want to put public service announcements on this. The number one urban myth around voting in Michigan is that a felony stops you voting. That has never been the case. People with convictions absolutely can vote. Now, the problem is, do you walk up to a polling station if you're not sure? Get shamed? No. So it's really important that we get the word out so that people know, so they don't self-select and stay home because they don't want to. Now, that self-selection problem, I mean, many of you know that I wrote bills that helped 1 million people in Michigan get old criminal records cleaned up. The reason that was important was so people can get jobs and housing and not have landlords trip them up with old convictions and not have potential employers trip them up with old convictions. But the trick there is, when you think about it, no one wants to be ashamed. You don't want to go to an employer and have them say, well, go away because you got a conviction. So it's so important that we build a society and a community that people can come back into and live with respect and dignity. And that has been one of the guiding principles of my life, is to try to fix mass incarceration and its after effects. So when I lecture on this, I would say, we don't just have an incarceration crisis in America, we have a stigmatizing crisis. Because after you're incarcerated, that conviction follows you around like an anvil on your back. And it's time we start taking that anvil off people's backs. I'm proud of the work we did in Michigan, and I'm proud to tell you all, 8 other states have copied my legislation. So I wrote the bills in Connecticut too, 7 other states copied afterwards. We absolutely need to live in a world where we forgive people after they make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. I need forgiveness. We all need forgiveness. I want to live in a world where we live out and believe forgiveness.
Every American president so far has been a war criminal, and we currently have one running for office that is literally about the idea that somebody wouldn't be able to vote for a felon or against a felon. They themselves are a felon is absolutely absurd. So
I want to pull a question from the crowd here for you. I know what we're talking about. So tell us what actions you plan to take to better bridge relationships between the city's citizens and the police force.
I think we should defund the police entirely. I think it's ridiculous. We have a police chief who was trained by the IDF in Chicago, and they just literally killed a descendant of the man who was lynched and caused the creation of the NAACP to begin with. This is a current, still happening issue to this literal day. So I don't think bridging a gap is ever going to happen. They keep absolutely shooting us, take away their guns, take away their money.
So I'm not in favor of defunding the police. Having been a prosecutor and having worked in that space a long time, a working city needs a certain level of public safety. That being said, when if relationships hit a low point, and they definitely have in Grand Rapids recently, you do have to bridge that gap. And so one of the first things you want to do is think about how you reduce that gap. Well, if we can, I think we have to name our goal. And I think the goal for Grand Rapids Police should be to move from what's frankly been a continent-wide dominant model of coercion, when police pull you over, they tend to want you to behave and they want to stick you in a box where you're going to behave and do what they want you to do. To a model that all of the good police officers I know go to, which is peacekeeping and problem solving. Now, the question is how you get the community to remember that good officers are trying to do peacekeeping and problem solving. How do you reward that behavior with better policies? How do you improve the police force with smart hiring? And how do you lean into that vision with leadership? And I will tell you, very high in our police chief, and I think that he's on the right track. And I think that a lot of the things that he's doing, he instinctively doesn't want to keep things secret. He instinctively discloses. The last time there was a police shooting in my neighborhood, he rolled the camera. He rolled the body cam within like 2 hours. He showed everything that came out of it. He said, now you all know what GRPD knows. There's going to be an investigation by the prosecutor. There's going to be an investigation by state police. But now you know what we do. And he walked everybody through it. So I think sometimes if there's insecurity, people can circle wagons and they can get protective and they can want to be secretive where it's at. All right. It's a complicated issue.
So the question was building police and community relations, correct?
Correct.
So I'll start off with a little bit of experience from serving on the commission. I was the chair of the Safe Alliances for Everyone Task Force, and our goal was to create an anti-violence strategy for our city. And we spent a lot of time engaging with all facets of the community. And so we had people at the table who were working directly with youth who were experiencing violent acts in the community. We had youth who were themselves participating in some of those violent acts. We had the police department, we had the prosecuting attorney's office, we had Network 180, we had a lot of different players at the table, because what we know for sure is that if we're trying to find solutions, it can't be singular solutions. It has to be multifaceted, because violent acts are multifaceted. And so we want to make sure that what we wanted to make sure was that people had an opportunity to speak to one another and engage with one another. I think that was one way in addressing and building community and police relations. In addition to that, I worked along with many organizations in the community to develop a 12-point plan. And what that plan did is it allowed us to bring awareness to some of the stats that existed with the arrest rate, as well as traffic stop rates here in our city, so that we can see that people were being trafficked, that they were being stopped, at a higher rate. Black people were being stopped, specifically Black people, at a higher rate than their white counterparts in the city. And so bringing data to the conversation is important, because if you're experiencing things, you know what you're feeling, but you don't always know how to explain it. And when there's data to support that, it helps you to know that things are real. The last thing is,
yeah, well, I was talking to someone the other day, and they had a couple suggestions, and I thought they were pretty practical and doable. The first was getting more cops walking the beat. It's a lot easier to build a rapport between the cops and the people in the community if people are just walking, the cops are walking the streets every day. And the second was he did not like having cops who lived in suburbs come to work in the city. He thought they should live in the city that they police. I tend to agree with that. And what the solution for that is, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm sure maybe the GRPD maybe incentivize police officers who live inside the city limits with maybe extra pay, maybe a couple of mills on the property tax.
Great, thank you so much, candidates. So moving on, this is question specific for former Commissioner Lanier. You led a countywide task force regarding human trafficking. However, it was mentioned that this process was halted due to COVID. Given that human trafficking has seen an increase of 20% within the past couple of years post-COVID, according to Fox 17 News, what has this task force done to combat this? That's a really good question, and thank you for asking it. So if I can share a little bit, the work group started because I personally became aware of a friend of mine whose daughter had been trafficked within a day of running away from home, and was kidnapped and trafficked for a weekend. and her life has forever changed. When I learned about it, I started wanting to learn more myself about what was happening in our community. And so I brought together, again, different people to try to have those conversations. We started bringing awareness to human trafficking in our city. It happens here, specifically downtown. It happens because we're a destination city where there's a lot of entertainment that happens. And bringing awareness was really important for us. So it did slow down, probably less cold, but slowed down significantly during COVID. And when we came out of COVID, to be honest with you, we had so many other pressing issues that I never resurrected it. But I can tell you, and I'm no longer in the commission now, and so I can tell you that it is a priority for me. As I've been going door to door, I'm hearing more and more people have this as a concern, and so I will bring it back. It was never an official task force of the city because the mayor did not establish it as such. But I will be making sure that the human trafficking task force comes together. I can see one member who is a part of that task force here in the audience today. We'll be coming back together to make sure that we're bringing awareness because we all need to know how we're impacted by it. Thanks for that question. Opening the floor to the rest of the candidates, how would you combat human trafficking as it has seen an increase within the past couple of years?
Well, we've got a lot of apparatus in our juvenile system right now, which we can bring to bear on that. The one thing that's worth pointing out is that we've really seen a wave in need in the juvenile justice system recently, and so frankly, that's something where we ought to have an honest conversation about increasing resources generally for the juvenile system. It is so important. I mean, I have to say, if I could make the adult system look like the juvenile system, I'd die happy. Because in the juvenile system, you get somebody who has a problem, and we tend to just bring resources to the problem. So you've got a kid who's not going to school, and you say, okay, well, do they need a tutor? Is this a mental health issue? Is this a substance abuse issue? Is there other problems at home? And so you identify problems, and you try to actually get that kid to a better place. And every day, I did that work for about 13 years maybe, and every day you would see cases where kids really got their lives turned around. So, Ms. Lanier pointed out that kid, one case she talked about was involved a kid running away from home. So, early intervention in those problem cases, and you see a lot of those kids coming out of homes that are fractured, and that's where those kids really get vulnerable. So, a good PO system in our juvenile system really can help there. Resources, integrated resources really can help. And I wish that our adult system worked that way, and I'm going to keep working to try to make our adult system look more like our juvenile system. But right now, I know our juvenile system generally needs more resources to help those kids.
If one of the major reasons for if one of the major reasons for human trafficking in the city is due to it being a destination city, then we need to stop fetishizing this location as a tourist attraction and focus on taking care of the people that are not.
Whoops. This question is for all candidates. What plan do you have to address the issue as such as young youth violence in the community?
Well, once again, this is looking at a structural issue. If we just say, oh, the kids are violent, we work this violent. That doesn't solve anything. There's reasons why we are all feeling so much pressure and tension on our backs at all times. There's a reason why society is getting more and more upset. We need to focus on that instead of trying to criminalize individuals.
So this is sort of the mother of all big questions, right? Because so many things feed into this. Things that as simple as, we don't just have road rage in our society. The other day I was talking to somebody at the door. We had a shopping market rage. People ramming cars into each other, right? Like the decline of general civility in our society, and people feeling like they have permission to go from here to 11. I mean, we've seen Supreme Court justice interviews, right? People who start yelling and getting angry. So part of it's on us. Like we have to build a culture of peacemaking, problem solving, civility, respect. So I think we all have to be careful to take ownership of this. Now, there are, once you get an identified problem, a kid who's actually had some violence issues, well, then there are, again, just to summarize for what the juvenile justices will get into that situation. But it's a whole lot better if you don't get there. And it's a whole lot better for school systems if you have things that don't require, you don't want to suspend and expel kids, right? When I started in GRPS, we were suspending and expelling 3,000 kids a year. That's crazy. We cut that in half almost immediately using restorative practices. And I haven't seen the data recently, but again, peacekeeping and problem solving generally as cultural values are going to feed in. And our kids are going to do what we model for them. So if we model conflict, antagonistic hostility, and as our method of doing things in our community, we can't really expect anything else out of our juveniles. So it's one of the reasons I'm glad, frankly, that this panel is a group of people who I think all really care about this community and all are trying to do good when they get up in the morning. So I think this race is a good, positive example of the community, to be honest.
Thank you. I'll go back to the Safe Task Force. So we put together recommendations from that task force, and they were designed to reduce violent acts in our city. And what we know for sure is that people who may be committing violent acts aren't just wanting to commit violent acts. It's tied to a number of different things. So on the economic side of things, we looked at how to make sure that there were opportunities for young people, because this strategy is from 14 to 24-year-olds. So that how can young people get jobs? So we talked about, and now we have in our city an increase in our Mayor's 1,000, where young people during the summer can get jobs, and the city will help them to place them into positions. So that was good, reducing violence. We talked about policy changes. We talked about having parents to be involved in some of the violent reduction conversations, because what we were finding is that we were funding some of the organizations who were reducing violence. They would come back to us to say, as we were training these things, the kids would come back, they would leave our hands, and they would go back into their household or in the community, and they would go right back to whatever it was they were doing. And so we started doing, we started funding initiatives where parents could also understand how violent acts impact their children in their future. No parent is rocking their baby saying, I can't wait to grow up to wreak havoc in the city. And so being able to provide the right tools for families and talking with them about what they need is vitally important. And then I think the last thing that what we try to do is we were funding organizations, I think to a tune of $600,000 directly those grassroots organizations who are making the impact to the youth who were impacted by the violence.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of remember the saying, I go hands on the devil's plaything. So if you have a full-time job, you're not going to be committing crime. And the way to get increase the number of full-time jobs is just investing in infrastructure and education. Education breeds innovation and increases in productivity. And infrastructure helps turn that innovation and creativity into good-paying jobs and businesses.
All right, thanks. I'm gonna interject here since we're talking, since you mentioned education being, key to jobs. So I pulled some data today from U.S. News and World Report on GRPS. I'm gonna just share some data with you, and I'd like to ask you a couple questions about this. Our elementary schools, we're in the 21st. We have 21% proficiency in reading in elementary schools, 11% proficiency in math, 30% proficiency in reading, and 17% proficiency in reading in middle schools, and 39% proficiency in reading, and 17% proficiency in math in high schools. With this data in mind, two questions. First, how will you hold the school board and superintendent accountable for these numbers?
You just fire if you could, or try to get them off the board. You need to have high-performing schools, and at the end of the day, the buck stops there.
So I served on the school board, and I know that this is another one of those complex issues. I think if we could wave a wand and get the results that we all want, people would do it if it were that easy. But I think from a city standpoint, what we can do is collaborate. So right now we have a department that's within the city that's also a joint department with the schools. And it's called Our Community's Children. And some of the work of Our Community's Children is to fund after-school programming, to actually they host the mayor's 1,000, the job placement that I was just speaking of earlier. And so I think part of it is making sure that you're providing the schools the support that they need, and providing families with what they need. One of the things that I brought with me today is the Ready by 5 millage information is that there at the table, because it all starts there. It starts in the womb. Children learn that early, and if they have the right foundation, early childhood is a part of that. If they have the right foundation, it helps them when they enter into the schools at kinder. And then supporting our teachers and administrative staff with the tools that they need to be able to provide the education for these kids. And, you know, it is a very challenging thing, because what we also have to do is make sure that parents know that they're the first teacher. And as being the first teacher, you have to learn yourself what it is that your child needs to know as they're going into school, so that you can support that educational process. As a parent, you are getting people to partner with you in your child's education. And so we want to make sure that we're partnering that way, and to go back to funding more of our after-school programs that we reduced that during the downturn in the early, I think it was 2013.
So, a lot of what Mrs. Lanier just summarized has been in place for a long time. None of it's bad. It's not bad that we have our community's children, but it's been around for a long time. It's not bad that we have parent diversity. It's good. We should lean into those things. We should affirm those things. But it is also equally true and real right now that we just went through a pandemic, and a lot of our response to that, particularly for our children, was badly inadequate. And often I think the first thing we have to do is be honest about the scale of the problem and name it if we possibly want to go further. So there are a lot of people right now who are quite very concerned about the numbers of children who are just missing a lot of school. So I sat down with somebody not long ago, who gave me just shocking statistics about the percentage of kids at Union High School who are missing more than 60 days in the course of the school year. And that's a lot of school to miss. And if you miss that much, it's kind of hard to learn by staying home and sleeping in. It doesn't tend to work really well. So it's really important at this moment we have a community conversation about getting those kids back into the classroom. Just like we're trying to figure out where the new stay at home versus going back to the office conversation's going, but for kids, we only get one shot at this. I can be a little wrong about like how many days I should go into the office, and it's probably not going to train wreck my career. But if you're a kid and the message you get is school is optional, like we did that on computers for a while, I could turn off my screen, do whatever I wanted, and the teacher couldn't hold me accountable, and that was more fun than going to school. That's a big problem. And it's a real problem right now, and it's showing up in the numbers. And the first thing we have to do is be honest about the fact that those numbers that you're giving there are fresh, they're new, and they're worse. And so I think the single biggest thing we have to do is have a community conversation about getting kids back in the classroom. Well, it's probably worse now than whatever it's any data gets stale than you have. I think things are almost certainly worse now than they were a couple of years ago. All the data I'm seeing seems to indicate that we've got a real COVID learning crash.
What are the schools even being used for at this point? It's pretty much to teach people how to be factory workers. I personally dropped out of high school in my senior year and got my GED because it was absolutely pointless. The schools themselves really only get funding based on academic scores and performances, so they don't focus on actually teaching the kids true skills to live a life with value, quality, and worth living even to begin with. They just teach you how to work at McDonald's and do the bare minimum. And they really need to teach you that. They only get funding based on how well you do on your scores. So they don't care about teaching you things that matter. If we're gonna worry about anything, it's why are we even teaching the kids what we're teaching them and what should we be teaching them instead? I think it's pretty wild that we put about 18 million into the police every year and put about nothing into the educational system. What if we switch that around? That's all.
All right, thank you, candidates. This is actually a specific question for Haley.
Oh, cool.
You stated if elected, you would donate your mayoral income back into the community. Where would this be specifically, and how would you also show this financial transparency to the community?
I don't know if you ever had that. It depends. With the salary thing too, I was like, oh, cool, 60K, that's really going to be helpful. But then they're 18 million for the police budget. I'm like, what is that? You could also take my salary too. I don't know how screenshots work with the government. I'm sure we'll figure it out.
The screenshots would be your way of showing financial transparency to the community.
I don't know how do you do that. You tell me.
Thank you.
This is for all the candidates. What makes you stand out from others?
Boy, I don't like stand out from the other candidate questions much. I prefer to ask like, what are my areas? What are the things I'm excited about trying to work on? So I'm excited to try to work on strengthening neighborhoods. And I have done a lot of investment in neighborhoods, as some of you know, like sort of the Wells Street Bakery, the Hall Street Bakery, and Four Friends back in the day, and now Palmer Distillers and Less Traveled. And so I've got a number of businesses that made the neighborhoods that are in better, as far as I can tell. So I'm hoping to work on stronger neighborhoods. I'm hoping to work on policing policy in the city because we have to do policing better than we've done historically, and we can. And I hope to work on real transformative work on housing because everybody knows we've got real housing problems in town. And finally, to hop, skip, and jump off Haley's financial disclosure, we've got a problem in this community right now in this country, which is nobody trusts the government. The only way I see to get through that is for the government to be more transparent, more open, more accountable. And so I put all my finances on the line, and I intend to advocate for a policy that anybody elected in the city has to disclose their finances. So I think that more disclosure, more honesty is critical going forward.
Well, I think the obvious makes me different than everyone who's sitting on this stage. But I'll also talk about some of my service. I have served in elected office in the school board. I completed that term. I think I'm the only person on this platform who has completed every single term that I was elected to. I also served and completed my term as the city commission, actually overturned when I served on the city commission because the elections changed from odd year to even year. My background, I'm not sure of everyone's background, but my background stems from me being a small business owner. I own a couple small businesses with my husband. I have corporate experience. I used to be a union leader and negotiated union contracts while I was in the corporation. Also in management and leadership, executive leadership in an organization. And I am a crested polar bear. Did you say that? You don't know it. That's I'm a cornerstone eagle. I am a mother of the good Dallas for you. Nobody else can say that here. And I'm a mother of my amazing children, and I'm happy to serve the city and happy to have had the opportunity to serve in so many ways.
Yeah, I'm just focusing on the disconnect between the city leaders and citizens. I've been walking around Grand Rapids. I've heard people complain about potholes, the lack of plowing, groundhogs, which really surprised me, childcare, cost of childcare, the cost of housing. But I've never heard anyone complain about the lack of outdoor amphitheater or a soccer stadium or an aquarium or any other project. So I'm just focusing on getting more spending into infrastructure and education, and not these big projects that have no real economic impact.
This is a specific question for Stephen. how would small businesses be able to provide the cost of childcare services to their employees?
That's a really good question, and I'm not really sure how a small business would do that because I haven't really seen a balance sheet or anything like that. But the idea is you would just create incentives for businesses to offer on-site subsidized childcare to their employees. I think there would be some savings just because of the lack of turnover, and the increased productivity, you probably be able to attract better talent and attract and retain the workers.
And this is for all the candidates. How do you promote diversity and inclusion within the local government and the community at large?
Well, you're going to hear me say this a lot, but that's what we invest in infrastructure and education. So when I was in the Marine Corps, you pretty much all start off on a level playing field, and there's a lot of minorities in the upper enlisted ranks, and that's just because everybody starts off on a pretty level playing field. And I think in order to achieve that goal, you have to invest in infrastructure and education to make sure everybody has a fair job.
Well, one of the things that when we were looking at devising our recently adopted new vision for the city and new mission, we talked about equity specifically and where it should be placed. And I remember going to that it needed to be spelled out in our mission or in our vision so that we can make sure that as we were establishing goals that it would be a part of it. I lost that battle. I was probably the loudest one screaming about that, and it didn't happen. But one of the things that I'll make sure happens is that as we're looking at the policies and procedures in our decision making, as we're looking at ordinances that we're revamping and starting from scratch, the equity is always at the forefront. When we were looking at the cannabis ordinance that we were establishing, equity was right at the front. So we wanted to try to, how do we right the wrongs of the people who were in prison for the same stuff that people are now going to be able to make billions of dollars off of. And so we tried to institute some parameters in there that made it hyper, that we wanted to encourage hyper local engagement with citizens here in the city to be able to become business owners, as opposed to those who are outside of the state coming in with their, some of the tobacco dollars to be able to put cannabis shops here in our city. So those were ways in which practically I've tried to make sure that equity was at the forefront. I also mentioned that with the police department, one of the things that I talk about frequently with policing that was going to be a part of my discussion earlier is how do you make sure that you attract those people who you want in the force that actually reflects the community. And so that's another important piece, is that we make sure that we're hiring at all levels, and especially in departments like our police department, so that people can see themselves reflected as they're being, as they're seeing officers.
Yeah, so I think that that's certainly an important topic, and I think that Sunita pointed touched on a lot of important areas. One of the things that's maybe to turn the question around a little bit and get back to something I think I was talking about feedback earlier, is I think we need to get into more of the mindset of including the entire community in processes, and not just a question of like who in city government or tests are using on city government, because the city government by itself is a subset of the community, and it's a subset of the community that has funny kinds of power over the rest of us. So I actually talked with a housing inspector the other day who was very, very invested in their ability to, rain trouble on people in the community over whether they had a peeling front door or whether the grass was mowed. And, they clearly were really invested in that. It's really important that we have the whole community take ownership of questions. And like real robust diversity and inclusion means breaking down the walls that we sometimes take for granted. So I think it's really important that we see city government as more porous than it already is. So yes, we should roll things. Of course, we have to be encouraging. We have to encourage our police force that's considered it gets a police force that looks like what we want it to look like. But of course, we have to do constant training in all the areas that can be barriers to real inclusion and real sharing of opportunity. But it's also true, and yes, we have to invest, we have to be careful about where we invest, but we also have to stop thinking about government as a specific silo in the community.
Well, first off, hiring minorities in the police force is often just a way to mask state violence against Black and Indigenous people of color. It's just really a good subversion tactic. That being said, my existence itself is cosmopolitan, international, multicultural. The idea that there would be a separation between my family and me, myself, being part of the government is everybody's not part of the government. That the community engagement continues because the community is not outside of me. I'm part of it, and they're part of me. Will continue to be so.
All right, unfortunately, we have a ton of questions here that we don't have time for, but I want to end with one more question for you, for everybody. How will you measure your success as mayor if you're elected?
How many people are off the streets? How many people have a full belly? How many people don't wake up crying every goddamn day? The shit sucks.
So when I was a state legislator, I always said that I try to look at two things. One is how many people were going to be affected by the thing you were trying to do, and how much you were going to affect their lives. So really, how I will measure success is whether we've made meaningful changes for a lot of people and things that can be better in town. So not if we can do performative little work on housing, but if we can do transformative work on housing. Not if we can nibble around the edges on energy security and economic security in our community, but how we can make real and massively quantifiable changes. So going back to the expungement example I gave you, 1 million people got their records cleaned up. On average, people who get their records cleaned up, their income goes up 24%. What that means is 1 million people got a huge economic opportunity when those bills passed. So at the city, I'm going to measure success by, have we had real changing in our policing culture? Have we had real movement on how we house the unhoused? Have we really done quantifiable major changes to how we do justice in this town? And not just nibble around the edges, and not just set up task force or spend a few tens of thousands of dollars on this and that and this. But have we really fundamentally changed the architecture of how we do justice? Have we changed the architecture of how housing happens in this town? Have we changed the level of trust people have in their community and in the government that's supposed to serve them?
Thank you. So when I was asked this question when I ended my term as commissioner, and one of the things that I said is that I felt satisfied. So when I left, I felt like I did the commission everything that I had. And certainly there was so much more that needed to be done, but I felt like I had accomplished the things that when I was running for office as third ward commissioner that people had shared with me that were challenges. And so I think the same would be the same for serving as mayor. I would gauge and determine if I was successful based on the outcome. So when you're an elected official, just to let everyone know, I call it prop serving. So sometimes you're doing things that you won't necessarily see to the end. So recently I was at the MLK groundbreaking for the MLK Lodge at MLK Park. And that was an initiative that we started, several years ago. Those conversations started. And so sometimes you're pouring into something and then, the increase happens later. The sowing and reaping happens and you may not be able to see it to fruition. And I think serving as mayor is going to be very similar to that. And so what I would want to do is make sure that the culture is the primary thing that I would want changed in our city, because what we have in Grand Rapids is an amazing place for people to live, but some of the things that we haven't addressed, I call there the junk drawer, and we need to open up the junk drawer so that it can be an amazing place for every single person who lives here. And we all know that there have been amazing great lists, for Grand Rapids and how good it's doing, but we also know we've been at the top of, or at the bottom of some lists about how poor we're doing for African Americans in our city. And they're not the only disenfranchised group, so I want to make sure that the culture change so that we all
Right,
fit into the city.
I guess I would measure success by the things you don't see. If you don't see potholes, you'll know I've succeeded. If you don't see snow piling up on the streets in the winter, you'll know I've succeeded. If you don't see a lot of homeless people, you'll know I've succeeded. If you don't see a bunch of economic growth in one area of the city, you see economic growth spread out all over the city, you'll know that I've succeeded.
All right, thank you. So one last comment before I thank you all for your time. Just given the statistics that I shared with you earlier on education, I just want to point out that none of you have education as a pillar on your website to address. So I just would encourage you all to consider championing, if that's a word, education in our city. And thank you for your time. Let's give them a hand.
Thank you very much, and you guys are free to leave at this time. I should say and enjoy. Well, you could just say that. But hey, folks, we're moving into round two. We would encourage everyone to stay for the third board candidate forum. If you need to grab something to eat, use the bathroom, we're going to get started almost right away here. So you guys would prepare for the third board candidates forum. If I can ask all of the third board candidates who are here, please come forward. Get you situated up on the dais, and we'll get started here shortly. So proud of you. Cheers here. Four. All six were invited, but I think only four are here. Thank you, John. Good job, man. Marshall, Reggie Howard to the front, Bing Dory to the front. Third board candidates here that I missed. And I have four on stage. Hold that for me, it's on. Okay.
Hey, good. I'm a cool man. Play by some transition. You got it from here. Oh, bro. You sure as well. Look. Good place. I think this is it's just that, right?
This is what I have. That's the testing. What's that? Okay, folks, we got the candidates up front. We'd love to ask everybody to take a seat. This is an important part of the City Grand Rapids conversation. We'll give you some time to talk 30 minutes later. Grab a seat. If you've got to stay standing, we would ask this time that you talk very quietly so we can go ahead and get started here shortly. Katie, where's Katie? Katie, are we all set? This. Are you going to be sitting here? You don't want that to fall. I got Katie Hoffman to the front. Katie Hoffman to the front. It's hard to get this started. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we got this big mic, so I can have quiet on the set. Quiet on the set. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very much for being here. My name is Ned Montre. I'm a life, I'm a medical school teacher to be here. Is that Tony back there? Shh. Can I get Tamia, who's that out back there? Shh.
Are you asking questions?
At the start here, I want to introduce myself, and I'd like to have the candidates introduce themselves. We're using very much the same ground rules as in the last conversation. This is a civil discourse, so we're gonna be respectful. We're going to make sure this is civilized, but this is a real and raw conversation for the third ward. We got 6 candidates running for third ward. We got 5 here tonight. So as I started earlier, my name is Matt. I'm a lifetime Grand Rapidian. I live in the third ward. I was asked to host this panel because I'm connected to the neighborhood associations. I'm connected to all the fabric of society in Grand Rapids, and I have a pretty good knowledge of what's happening in the third ward. So I wanted to start our conversation tonight with a little bit of level setting, just so that everyone is aware of the third ward. The city of Grand Rapids is divided into 3 wards. There are 2 commissioners for each of those wards. So the third ward, of course, gets 2 seats. The third ward's boundaries extend from Welcome Division, so all along the division, and then from Wellesley Street all the way to East Grand Rapids. So we are kind of the southeast part of the city. I think it's important for people to know that the third ward is not connected to the central business district in any way, meaning that the first ward and the second ward share the entirety of downtown Grand Rapids between them. And there's a lot of development, a lot of things going on there. As well as the Grand River runs through Grand Rapids, but the third ward is disconnected from the Grand River. So there's $1 billion project going up and down the Grand River to revitalize downtown, build up the river, get people going on that. So that's the third ward. And when we talked earlier about kind of that conversation about democracy, one thing that we should know in the third ward is that we've had 2 city commissioners step down early. In that final year, the city itself has the ability to appoint. So in the last couple of elections, we've not had 2 publicly elected commissioners sitting on the third ward commission. And so we want to keep these kind of background things in mind as we go ahead and get started. I'd like to ask now that the candidates take a minute, if they would introduce themselves. We got a microphone here, Johnson, you guy. We'll just go right across here. Take a minute or so and introduce yourself to the people here, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the 3 prearranged questions.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Garfield Park, Neighborhood Association, and the NAACP for hosting this. It's a privilege to be here tonight. So I'm John Kransky. I grew up here in the third ward, as did my wife. We have 3 children, and they were all raised here in the third ward. I went to school at Aquinas where I studied political science. And from there, I got my first job. I went to Lansing and community college down there and then became a police officer for the city of Grand Rapids. I did that for 5 years. I went back to school at Aquinas. I got a master's degree in education. I became a teacher and a basketball coach. And I went back to school again at Western this time to get another master's in educational leadership. And then I worked as a school principal, and I've done that for the last 20-some plus years. So that's a little bit about me. My whole career, I'm really just trying to dedicate myself to helping others. And I love Grand Rapids and the third ward in particular.
Either way.
My name is Joyce Gibson, Priscilla Gibson, and I'm a new resident of Grand Rapids. I've been here for 5 years now, and I'm very Rapidian. I've been here for 5 years. My children have been here for 5 years in the third ward, and my grandchildren go to school in the third ward. The reason I'm before you right now is because I know that there's an opening for third ward, which we all are competing for. But my ex is that I'm a woman, and I'm a single parent. My children are grown, they're raising children of their own. But growing up, I grew up in Decatur, Michigan. Growing up, I had typical elementary and high school years. From there, I went to college. I went to Lansing Community College, and I transferred from Lansing to Loyola University of Chicago, where I got pregnant. When I came home from pregnancy, after I had the kids, I had twins. After I had the kids, I found out that I had no skills in anything other than education. So I enrolled in the junior college, neighborhood junior college, and transferred all my credits. 2 years later, I graduated with an associate's degree. 2 years later, I graduated with a bachelor's degree. And from there, I've been working through my life.
Hello, everyone. My name is Reginald Howard. Call me Reggie. I'm born and raised in the 3rd Ward. Love the city of Grand Rapids. After I graduated from Crescent High School, I joined the United States Navy, and I served in the United States Navy from 1980 to 1991. So I've been around the world. I can just tell you I was on the street when Princess Charles and Princess Diana got married. So I shed a tear when she passed. But one of my reasons for being so passionate about what I do, being born and raised in the 3rd Ward in the city of Grand Rapids, I came back home and I think a lot of disconnect. I see where a lot of brokenness is in our city. I see where we have a lot of divide. And being a veteran, I see that I got a job working for the VA. So I think our veterans suffering. So I started a veteran drop-in center. And our veteran drop-in center, we serve all veterans and their families. It doesn't matter what race you are. And what happened with that, by starting a veteran drop-in center, there's much more to be done to unify the city. So the reason why I'm running for 3rd Ward is because I know I can make a difference. I've been here. I've already served it. I served on the Civilian Appeals Board. If you don't know what that is, the Grand Rapids Civilian Appeals Board is when you file a complaint about the Grand Rapids PD, that the complaint comes to us. And I sit on that review on that appeals board. I also sit on the King County Veteran Board. I also work diligently at my church. I do a lot of stuff in our community with the youth. I'm very passionate about seeing our young people strive. I want to see them be business owners. I want to see them one day sit up on the stage. I want to let them know they can do more. So one of my main things about helping out the city of Grand Rapids is not only bring my skills, it's to also bring the knowledge and also bring the love and compassion that I have for the city of Grand Rapids.
Thanks, John. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Marshall Kilgore. My pronouns are he, him. I am a proud 4th generation Greater Rapidian, and I am also a human rights advocate. So my work has been around policy and advocacy, fighting for what I consider frontline communities, folks that are the first and the worst, young folks, elderly people, women, people of color. That's been my work. Worked for folks like Governor Whitmer in 2018 as the deputy field organizer, getting folks involved civically on the west side of the state, and most recently worked hard to get the first Black woman on the Michigan Supreme Court, Justice Tyra Doris Bolden, as her community relations director for the whole state of Michigan. I currently serve as the Director of Engagement for the West Michigan Environmental Action Council, doing advocacy. And I loved Reggie talking about civilian board service. I'm already working hard for you now. As the chair of the Vital Streets Oversight Commission, I help provide oversight to over $50 million in city infrastructure projects. So I'm just happy to step up and help neighbors. Like John, I'm also a Brown Belt from Western Michigan University and studying political science and communication. So thank you for being here. Thank you to the GPNA and the NAACP for hosting us tonight.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Big Going, and as part of the Asian culture, my parents taught me when I am introduced or being introduced to someone or introducing myself, we stand out of respect for everyone who's here. So I will do this just once, and then I'll sit down and answer questions. But I was born in Jakarta, Indonesia. We, as a family, fled Indonesia when communism took over. We ended up in the Netherlands for about 5.5 years until the United States, the President Eisenhower opened up their immigration quotas for Indonesian political refugees. And we were sponsored to Grand Rapids by the Fuller Avenue Christian Reformed Church. One of the things that drives me to do things for the community and with this community is because this community has given us new life. And so I want to share with you a picture that that was given to me of our arrival in Grand Rapids. This is the front page of the Grand Rapids Press. The date is January 9, 1960. That's our family arriving here. So I've lived in Grand Rapids since January 1960. I'm the owner of Eastern Floral. I'm also the founder and owner of the Goer Center at the southwest side of Grand Rapids. My passion for wanting to run for this particular position is not because I'm looking for a career. I'm 76 years old. I don't need a career. I'm blessed, but wanting to give to the city, back to this third ward especially, what I think is my knowledge about how to address poverty. No one's talking about poverty. We hear all these things about all the problems we have. All I'm saying is, unless we address poverty, we will continue to have these problems in front of us. Poverty can be reduced through sound economic development and sound wise investment by the city in the third ward. Thank you.
Thank you. If you pass it to Marshall. Let's take the prearranged questions. There are three. Then we'll be getting into some unexpected questions and then questions from the audience. Marshall, what will your first priority as commissioner be?
Yeah, well, it's really hard. I think in working in politics and working behind governors, or Michigan Supreme Court justices, I've seen how your first priority, what you believe is going to be your first priority, isn't always that. But there are some things that you can commit yourself. And so I split this question into two. What I'm going to do first in terms of people, in terms of connecting, is the listening tour. Currently, our third ward commissioners, there's no monthly avenue in which you can connect with them. I believe that we deserve better. So I want to connect with you and listen to you. I come from a family of talkers. My grandma Jerry could talk to a brick wall and make it laugh. And I believe that I have learned and honed in on the skill of actively listening. 50% of our issues can be solved if both parties can come together and listen. So that's a big part of it. Second part of that is policy. I'm the one who has the most experience here in terms of working on policy and bringing it to fruition. So what I'm going to do policy-wise is provide full-throated advocacy for the third ward equity fund. And what that will do is bring much needed resources here. Our current commissioners both talked about the need for it, but one didn't make it to the vote for the budget, and the other voted for only $1 million for the third ward equity fund. This is unacceptable. So first thing I'm going to do is listen to you, deeply, actively listen to you. And second, full throat, fight like heck to get the resources that we deserve here in the third ward.
John, what is your first priority as commissioner?
Thank you. For me, running this campaign and having the ability to walk around the neighborhood, all from, as you mentioned, from Wealthy Street all the way down to 44th Street, and all the different parts of the third ward of Grand Rapids, and just talk to people and hear what matters to them. And I kept hearing a resounding theme around the importance of safety, and safety on many levels in our neighborhoods. And so for me, I think that's one of my main priorities, and that would be my first top priority. I think when you look at the National Community Survey data, which starting in 2019 and then dropping 9 percentage points to 54% of the folks in 2022 saying that they felt generally safe in the third ward. And I know that the new National Community Survey will come out very soon, the 2024, and I believe it'll be the next commission night out when they'll share some more ward specific, but the information I've seen suggests that that trend continues. So I think if nothing else, what do we owe citizens, our neighbors? Safety. I think there's a lot of ways to get at that. It could be mental health, it could be law enforcement, with proper training techniques. I hear people talk to me about, hey, on my ring doorbell, I've heard 15 gunshots come off. And that's what people say. People say, I'm sick of the packages dropped off being stolen. I want to know why pedestrians don't feel safe, whether they're on foot or bikers. So these are the safety questions that people are talking about to me. I think that I have a couple ideas as far as raising staffing levels for both the fire and the police, and also training options that come with it. I think just as importantly is making sure that I'm being a good listener, getting to know folks individually, making sure I'm working with our community partners, and that I'm taking the time to listen to their specific safety needs and find viable options to make sure that we achieve those things.
Thank you. Denise?
Joyce.
Joyce, pardon me, I apologize. What will your first priority as commissioner be?
Well, right now, I'm competing with the first ward for the entertainment centers. And my first priority, if I get elected, would be to do not compete with the first ward, but to open up the families and have a discussion on the families and what they need. Right now, it's our families. We're family children. And yes, there's a need when they're in the womb and when they're young, but there's also a need when they get older. When they're being watched upon. What do you want to do? Where's your education? What are you going to be doing in the next 2 years? Are you going to college? That's an overwhelming position. But just getting in the puberty at 16, where I wanted to focus on moving towards integration and coercion with the young people, finding out what they want to do, and asking them, would you like to do cadet teaching or cadet banking or cadet announcers at airports? But finding out what young people want to do and getting their opinion. Thank you.
And Reggie, what will your first priority as commissioner be?
One of my first priorities, what I want to do, it's a little old lady I met when I was canvassing, and she has no idea how the city commission works. So one of my first priorities, I'm going to go to her house and thank her for her vote. And then I'm going to set up a time in a meeting to have a lot of our third ward come down to City Hall to have the conversation and thank them. I don't know if you know, but a lot of people that live in our third ward do not know where we are at 300 Monroe. They do not know how the city operates. You don't know how many doors I knocked on where people didn't even know they were living in the third ward. So one of my number one priorities is not only to thank them, but to let them know how we're going to work and how I'm going to work with them. I may meet downtown for the commission meeting, but my job is going to be to work with them in the community. So that's going to be my number one priority, is to let the people know how accessible I am and let them know where they can come and see me, and they can come and see the rest of the commission to bring whatever. It's not always has to be a complaint when they come downtown. Thank you, Reggie, for making sure my yard got cut, or my snow got plowed, or my interaction with the police. I also want to make sure I let our community know, if you have a problem, I'm approachable, and I will answer my call or my text, or I'll call you back. But my first priority is to unite the third ward, to let them know that I work for them and with them. That's my priority.
Mr. Gold, what will your first priority be?
My first priority will be what I told the city commission when they were going through the interview process of appointing someone to fill the vacancy for Booty. And what I said to them was that I would listen, that I will use my wide broad of experiences to be able to implement the ideas that I will be presenting. I just thought about it. I've done, well, I will not talk about things that I wish I could do or I will do when I have not done it in the past. And also that I will use my broad experience of working with diverse communities, understanding the diverse cultures that we have, the richness of those cultures in the third ward, and understanding the communication styles, how they want to see their lives being shaped, and how they want to see their quality of life being determined here in the city. I just want to address my good friend Mark here. You know, when you referenced about one of the commissioners not being there for the budget, he should be courageous enough to call him out. Because it was me. It was me. And you know what? You can call me out, but I will not give up on the family. I will never give up. My granddaughter was graduating from high school. So, you know, if you want to be a commissioner, call out the problem. Don't go hide behind things, just call it out. And that's what I will do to make sure that your voice is heard at the city commission level.
All right, now we'll start this time with John. What are your top goals for the third ward during your time of service?
I have 5 top goals, and I'll outline them quickly. Safe and secure neighborhoods, the academy, quality city services, education, and transparency in government. I talked a bit about safe and secure neighborhoods in the previous question, so I'll just not touch that, but only say that I think it's important that we take that national community survey data very seriously, and that we work hard to create an environment in the third ward where everybody feels safe. We owe that to our neighbors. And I think that also goes hand in hand with some of the community relationships between neighbors and law enforcement. I've got some ideas on that as well. I think as far as the economy, it is imperative that we continue to support local businesses. We have to create an environment that allows them to thrive and encourages the creative folks who are entrepreneurs to start businesses. We need to attract new businesses, and we need to retain those folks here. When individuals have meaningful work and jobs that they enjoy doing in a wage that pays the bills, cleans up a lot of other social issues. So I think that's a big piece of it. I want to work to help find and support those things, and also to listen to the business owners, see where they're finding the biggest issues and troubles and how we can support them. I think there's also a relationship between the businesses and safety, meaning if things aren't safe or people don't feel safe, then they won't go places and spend money and keep the economy rolling. So I'd also say that from a business perspective, it's great when the business owners know the law enforcement professionals and trust the law enforcement professionals and see the same law enforcement professionals in that area. So I think working on that will be a priority as well.
Right.
For me,
Thank you. We'll come back. Marshall? Marshall, what are your top goals?
Yeah, so I've communicated since the beginning of this. Like Commissioner Goey said, 3 of us up here were in the second round. I'm really honored to be by these public servants, Commissioner Goey, who was appointed to the role, and John, who were in the top 3 to fill this role. So I've been getting feedback from our community for months now, since December, to see where the priorities of the people truly are. And that talks about my 3 E's. I love alliteration, so I'm excited to bring my energy, empathy, and experience to talk about the 3 E's here. Number 1, environmental justice. The Director of Engagement for the West Michigan Environmental Action Council. I don't know if you all know, but the third ward has historical environmental injustices, such as vapor intrusion that happened right on Madison Street. And let's give it to the folks for language. Vapor intrusion is a big term, but it's, you know, the dry cleaners of yesteryear buried their degreasing materials and those vapors rose up. And those are cancer-causing chemicals that are now in our communities. So we need a commissioner who's gonna tackle things like that. I'm also gonna champion actual community solar that will save us money on our utility bills, in addition to planting more trees. I also wanna work really hard to talk about the economy. I've been talking to folks for months now, door to door, and I've had this happen twice, where someone is taking off one uniform to put on the next. So they're telling me, hurry up, Mr. Gilmore, we gotta go here. So it's sort of a smack in the face to talk about big business to folks. And that is relatable. What we need to be talking about is encouraging businesses that pay a livable wage here in the third ward. My grandfather, Governor Lee, had a shoe repair business right on Eastern. So we do need to support entrepreneurs and small businesses, but first we gotta give folks a good paying job. And lastly, equitable housing, that's huge as well.
Mr. Goey, what are your top goals for the third ward?
Sure, three that I would like to focus on. I think that's a manageable number. First and foremost, invest in our children. If we can invest in making Grand Rapids a tourist destination, building the necessary infrastructure to ensure that we're successful in doing so, Grand Rapids must also begin to invest in its children. We must allow our children to have the best education possible. So you talked about the mayoral discussion about public education and education. I think the city of Grand Rapids needs to make more investments in that area. I think we need our children to become the best talent, the best researchers, scientists, plumbers, electricians, and educators as well. Grand Rapids must recognize that we are a global economy, and I think the investments from the city of Grand Rapids into the third ward must also reflect their willingness to spend many dollars in terms of our entertainment. The reduction of poverty, we have a 25% poverty level in the state in this third ward. We must reduce the poverty. This is such an embarrassment and a shame for the city of Grand Rapids to have 1 in every 4 of our neighbors in the third ward live in poverty. We must do that through small business development, and I'm going to focus on making sure that African American owned businesses in the third ward and across the city are going to be able to have good investments made by the city, giving them opportunities to participate in city contracts and all these things that are being spent in the city of Grand Rapids. Did you know that African American owned business in Kent County brings in less than 14% of all revenues? And that less than 1% of African American owned businesses have annual revenues of over $250,000. That is a shame, and I understand how to do economic development. I have done it. I have helped people, and you can see that in my flyers. But here's the bottom line: small business economy must flourish in the third ward.
Thank you, Reggie. Top goals for the third ward.
It's gonna sound a little different to you, but one of my top worries is that as I talk to people, I'm tired of hearing about, they call it affordable housing. Because mostly everybody I talk to say it's affordable to who? I don't know if you know that during COVID when these landlords were allowed to jack up the rent so high that most people got put out. They didn't get a choice of who they got put out, but as they got put out, they got evictions. So what's the hardest thing to do once you got an eviction? Is get another apartment. So one of my things is I want eviction expungement. I want somewhere to where somebody can recognize why we have so many homeless people. That's homeless not by choice. They're homeless because their landlord will knock on their door and say, the person next month, your rent's going up $500. But your income's only $750. What it is, my number one thing is, why do we have so many homeless people if we say it's affordable housing? Who is it affordable to? It's affordable to us that can work, or it's affordable to two families that have to live together because they can match the $1,400 for a one-bedroom apartment. My number one priority is to work with them downtown to try to get some of these evictions off some of our residents' records that didn't deserve it. And now they're living in slumlord apartments, roach infested, land infested apartments, because they can't be the recipient of what we call affordable housing. Number two, at my campus, I went around to a lot of African American businesses. A lot of my African American business was here when I was a kid. They don't even get the facelift money that's given to the third ward. You don't see any beautification at some of our barbershop owners who are sitting in there saving to cut our young people's hair or doing our young people's hair. They're struggling day to day. So one of my second party is say, help them enjoy and grow their business. My third thing is to make sure everybody has a voice being heard in the third ward.
Thank you. Joyce, what are your goals for the third ward?
My number one goal for the third ward is to get families back on the totem pole. Families, the first institution that got offered. Families, the children, the father and mother are divorced. The children are sitting at schools. What's happening? Where are we fitting ourselves? We're competing with downtown, the first ward, in entertainment facilities when we can't even put program. What's going on in our families? My number one and my most going forward into this year would be to include the family.
Thank you. And now we're going to move into the portion of the program where we turn it over to the audience to ask questions. We've got some that have come in and out, but we're also ready to meet people where they are. Someone back here, if you can tell us your name and where you live, if you're in the third ward or not. Short, concise questions, short, concise answers.
My name is Burwell Iglesias. I've been working for Oakdale and they're 64 years. What I think would help, when I call 311, then when I call them, they give my question or my needs to you guys. It should go directly to the commission. So that way you know what's going on within the community. And I think that would help a lot, and you would understand really some of the problems that happen in certain parts of the community.
Okay, a statement more than a question. Marshall, you want to answer that?
Thank you, John. Yeah, I think continuing to update our city services is huge. And once again, this type of feedback is really important. But I want to continue to make 311 more robust. Right now, the Chair of the Bible Streets Oversight Commission working on infrastructure. If you all don't know, you can call about a pothole. You can call 311 about a pothole. They go directly to engineering. So that sort of framework is there for the city. So why not bring it with you? So thank you for your feedback.
Thank you. Couple more thing.
I think it's a great question, and I think the city is doing a pretty good job. It can certainly improve, but we as commissioners, we do hear of the issues and the concerns that are being raised by the call they receive.
Thank you, Reggie.
Also, this is the right number for everybody that's appointed to the commissioner. They have a separate phone line. So I encourage you to find out who your commissioner is and then dial their direct number that is given on the website.
Thank you. And another question from the audience. Jack, you want to answer that?
Thank you very much. I like that suggestion very much. I would also wonder if it would make sense to publicize somewhere what the bulk of the 311 calls were and to log that data so we can see trending over time what the common themes were, and if we're missing something and not addressing it, we can come back and do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity, Pastor Daniel Scott, First Ward. I want to know each of you, what you would do for the most vulnerable of our citizens in the whole city, and that is the unborn. Are any of you pro-life or are you pro-death?
Marshall?
I'm probably pro-choice. As commissioners, I think probably the progressive candidate. This question needs to be of a wonderful organization that's been fighting hard for the choice reproductive freedom since 2003. Thank you to the Progressive Women's Alliance for endorsing my campaign. Thank you to the County Democrats for endorsing my campaign. And as commissioners, we gotta be real. That's a question realistically, in my opinion, for a Congress member or a senator. We're working on the city budget and directly services, not really on choice, but I'm pro-choice.
Thank you, Joyce.
I'm pro-life, and I'm trying to be pro-life. My experience, when I was in college, I got pregnant. And as soon as I got pregnant, I wasn't qualified to do anything but to go to school. And it's such a whip, just rolling down the hill. One thing after another. And I found that the mom of my children was already married. And eventually, because I wanted to raise and take care of a family and do everything else for the family. And because I made the decision to be pro-life, I was just, and I'm continually just. I'm just saying that I am pro-life and I'm proud of it.
Thank you. Answers to that question. Okay, next question.
Jamil Robertson, lifelong third ward resident and business owner in the third ward. My question is, a couple of years ago, the city of Grand Rapids declared racism as a public health crisis. And usually when crises are declared, there's resources and other things that become available and red tape is cut. One, I want to know each candidate stands on the fact that the city declared racism as a public health crisis. Are you in favor of that declaration? And two, what resources and ordinances will you move in order to release resources to the third ward and other wards when it comes to funding and other apparatuses and resources to alleviate racism as a public health crisis?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the question. I think that likely the biggest evil in America is racism. And I think the ability for us to address it as a city is important. What I would have detailed more in the earlier question was, as an educator, I think a lot of these proactive measures that we take are in conjunction with the school systems. So in an effort to combat racism, I would want to team up as a commissioner with the school systems to begin discussing that as an early age. I think the more honest dialogue can be around race, and the more we can bring that to the forefront, the better chance we have of impacting the young people's perceptions on the evils of racism and systemic inequalities that we see right here in Grand Rapids to this day.
Young man, to speak to that, I'm not qualified as a business owner, so I wouldn't know what type of racism. I found my experience here in Grand Rapids concerning that issue to be fairly fair. I have not fallen due to that. And advice to give you would be to continue as you are right now. Get a second opinion, but continue as you are.
I'm just gonna be open with it. I'm tired of the city hiding behind it. They're acting like racism doesn't exist in the city of Grand Rapids. And a lot of times I feel like it's sugarcoated as far as in our inner city. I feel like the only time we really publicize is when something bad and there's a lot of good that's happening in our inner city. So what I would do is make sure that we get the funds that we need and the resources that are made available to show how we are diverse and how we are taking young African American businesses and how we are highlighting them. Because that's another thing that's missing. The Black contribute to the city of Grand Rapids is not highlighted enough to where a lot of people, I still feel like the city has a lot of racism, even when you canvass it door to door. And I would like to bridge that gap to let them know we are one. The city say we are one, but the action shows we are 2 and 3.
Thank you. Any others that would like to take that racism is a public health crisis in Grand Rapids? Would you affirm that from the commission? And what resources would you move to address that health crisis?
I don't know why they say it's a health crisis. I think it's a moral crisis. And I think that what needs to be done and how to overcome racism is to become involved. I will assure you that already in the 3 months that I've been in the commission seat, We are addressing racist behaviors. We are addressing inequities. We are addressing a lot of these things which are being disguised. Well, we can't do that type of response. And we are continuing to move. Commissioner Purdue and I have made a commitment to the third ward, and we've already made progress in that matter. But we've got a long ways to go. If you talk about racism, I will tell you that I was told by a bank to go work for someone because I'll never succeed to be in business. I was told by another bank in 2001 that they would require me to have 80% equity. Okay. Luckily, I had two other banks say, you got 20%, we got you. And that same bank that wanted 80% equity from me gave a competitor for the same product to another person with no experience, never had a business of their own. And I have the commitment letter in my files where the bank says, oh, you're okay for 20%.
Thank you. Any others would challenge, answer that question?
Yeah, I would affirm that. And here's the thing, so I've done work, whether it's leading one of the largest rallies for combating Asian hate over COVID in the state of Michigan, or if it's fighting hard for Black and brown folks getting access to grants for environmental work here in the city of Grand Rapids. I've done the work already, not just talking about it. And I think that's what we need to do as a whole for the city. It's not enough to just talk about how racism is bad. You must be anti-racist. How you do that is fighting for equitable housing, making sure folks can have a roof over their head. That's how we fight racism. Giving access to livable wages, jobs where you not only scrape by on your bills, but maybe you can have a gym membership so you're healthy. That's being anti-racist. Making sure that we don't have the heat island effect here in our neighborhoods where Black and brown communities are higher because we don't have tree canopy. That's being anti-racist. So I would not only affirm that, but then also go to, and sound like a broken record, but the third ward equity fund, this is what this came from, is trying to address this inequity. So if we don't back this up with policy and the dollar pocketbook, then we're just talking about it. I want to do more.
How are you, both? My name is Larry. I live in the third ward. My question is, how are you balancing all of the improvements that you want to make for the third ward and also protect people who live here from gentrification? What follows that? You look at the wealthy street corridor, but it forces the rents go up, it forces the people who were there to have to go somewhere else.
Mr. Love asked us how we would balance essentially being pro-business and quote-unquote improving neighborhoods with gentrification and maybe displacing folks who live there for generations. Did I capture that, Mr. Love?
Yes, sir.
I like that question very much, and my thoughts around that would be you have to be very purposeful and intentional around who you are supporting economically. So when we are encouraging community partnerships, we need to make sure these are individuals who espouse the same value sets, diversity and equity, as we do. And yes, we want always to see improvements, but not at the risk of having the people who have historically for generations lived in these houses not be able to do so. I talked to a gentleman in such a neighborhood in the third ward recently, and he said that was a real fear of his. That he, in his words, well, when will I be pushed out, right? So I think we just have to make sure that the policies, procedures that we put in place as a commission are reflective of the values we hold. Yes, we want to see things get better for all citizens of all races and creeds and nationalities and religions, absolutely, but not at the expense of displacing folks who have been there over generations.
Thank you. The others?
Also, one of the things that I would like to do is, teach our elderly the value and help them with resources to keep their homes. Instead of having somebody come to their house saying, yeah, we'll repair your windows and we'll do something for you, but the cost is so high that they can't afford it, but then we'll move you to Kentwood, is we need to have a committee of people that they can come to and say, hey, this is what's going on, and I need your help. What's happening in our community, people are going behind people's back, going knocking on doors with elderly people and saying, well, if you don't get this done, you're not gonna be able to afford your home. Here's a check for $100,000, but your house in Kentwood is $400,000. But what we need to do is help our community. We need to educate our community, and we need to stand by their side in our community and let them know this will not be tolerated. We want lead pipes out of the home. We want new windows. We want the same upgrades that you are giving somebody else that is not going to cost us our home. And those are the type of values that I want to do with the people in our community who are losing their homes now, that people are giving them false information and not giving them resources to the home.
Thank you. At the final side. Oh, Joyce?
Streets, I saw those faces, what they, the value, what they had with me personally, the commitment, the trust they put in me, the loyalty that they're begging me for. This is what I can guarantee. This is what I'm putting on. This is what I want to be about.
Thank you for that question, Ms. Love. Improvements are necessary for our community to continue to thrive. I've done that myself. I bought a Mayoral Center when nobody wanted to live in the neighborhood. And I invested my own money into my building. I'm now having a conversation, and I've got about 10 individuals who are part of the third ward. When I came to them, I said, look, we can invest in our own neighborhoods. We can invest in our own third ward. And we can then control what happens with those investments. And I think it's time for the third ward to realize that we are rich in assets. We are rich in talent. We are rich in knowledge. And what we need to do is to put them all together. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm having those conversations. We hope to bring an LLC group together of people of color, and who are not going to look at individual investments. If you look at the history of Grand Rapids, the history of Grand Rapids isn't in downtown. It's not like downtown overnight. In the 1970s, you could shoot a cannon down Village Street and not hit anybody. But you know how it started? It started with one building, investment in one building called a panel. And all I'm saying is in the third ward, maybe we don't have all the assets that the first ward had with river, whatever it is. But we can do the same thing. We can do it by one building at a time. We're starting it right now.
I mean, these leaders up here are phenomenal. I think this is a lot of these issues that we're talking about in social work. We talk about wicked issues. Wicked not meaning that they are unsolvable, but it's going to take some hard work to get them really accomplished in a much better place, right? And this is one of those. But the conversations that I'm hearing, Commissioner Goy, that's wonderful, but I love everyone's perspective, but it's going to take more than 10 folks to talk about what we deserve here in our community. This is feedback that I've gotten from our community for years now, is they feel as though it's the big boys club. If you're a developer, if you're wealthy, you got to sit at the table. The third ward deserves more than that. So when we have big projects, we need to make sure diverse voices are there, both socially, economically, race, and then we make the decisions. These projects that feel disconnected from the community, were they made with too much haste? What was the time, the feedback period, and how many folks were there? Not just wealthy folks who are ready to come together and do their project. It should be for all of us.
Thank you, sir. And the next question here.
Williams, I'm, like, long resident in the third ward, and, my questions are twofold. One, what are your plans to improve and retain Black home ownership in the third ward, where that in my time has been the base of the Black community, as well as economic development there, or again, the people, the Black people that have lived there and supported the third ward for so long. And then part two of my question is, how do we, what are your plans to address, the over policing of Black people in the third ward? I hear safety and security as kind of a dog whistle to over policing, and so I would like some answers with regards to that.
Okay, first of all, as far as helping our African American people keep their homes in our communities, also as teacher, when we know the interest rate is lower, you know, when we can help them with resources and financial guidance, and we know things are available, and encourage them, and I would encourage them, but also see how the resources can help beautification in our neighborhood. That's another thing that don't get talked about. There's money to help homeowners with beautification of their neighborhoods. Also, some of our senior programs, they help them keep their grass and keep their snow down. But one of the things we have to do is get boots on the ground when allowing them to be taught and helped. And when you want to say, the second part you were asking about, what were you saying? Yeah, now, over policing. This is one of the big things, I don't know if any of you, but I took the Grand Rapids Police Civilians, Police Academy, so we can learn, why the police do what they do. And one of the things I encourage our community to do is get out and let's bring our police into our community. And let's know when the shift changes, we should know who that sergeant is on duty. A lot of times, the police officer, we don't know who they are. So when they show up, the first thing they do is tell us to shut up. So we have to start with holding our police accountable, but also knowing who they are and who they report to. And not be afraid to address the police and file the complaint. That's what we have to tell our community.
Thank you. Retaining Black home ownership and then over policing in the third ward.
The third ward. And I'm living in the third ward. My children and my grandchildren live and go to school in the third ward. I have no future without the third ward. Would Black police come to my door? You know what they want? Because I don't think they think what they're asking me. But I don't experience at all. And I'm waiting for the experience to happen. Third ward.
Thank you so much for the question. I think in regard to helping retain ownership for African Americans in housing, I think we have to go back and look at educational opportunities, and there are great programs that exist. We need to continue to bring that information forward to help people gain access to finances that they need. There's a lot of help out there. I think a big piece of the work that the commission should be doing is bringing this to the streets, so people are understanding what it's going to take to help them economically to keep their home ownership. And as far as addressing over policing in the third ward, I think that over time we need to work, and I think we have a lot of the right players in place to shift perception of the community, certain aspects of the community, and law enforcement, and in that relationship there. I think that we have a lot of the right players in place. The oversight committee was a great addition to Grand Rapids, right? So there's a formalized process how we can take a complaint and hold individuals accountable, and rightfully so. I would also say, and not that any one thing is on the shoulders of an individual, but I think that we have the right players in the right places. I think that Chief Eric Wickstrom is a wonderful breath of fresh air and a visionary. And I know from having a lot of conversations with folks on their doorstep while campaigning that we can do a lot of good with the right education, resources, training, and a community policing model.
Yeah, thank you so much. And John, and I would agree. So I have been the most full-throated advocate for community policing. Once again, these public servants up here with me, this was a question asked in the appointment process, who's gonna fill Commissioner Booney's role. I was the only person who used that same diction in saying over policing. For a city of 200,000 plus folks, right? We have 3 social workers, 3 folks who do that type of task. So many of our calls to 911 really are mental health calls. They really are. People in panic and people feeling the weight of this wild world that we all have to navigate. And so that's the big thing is we have to find money in our budget to help our first responders, give them the support that they need. But I've been the strongest advocate of actual community policing. I'll try to tell the story quickly, but you know when you have your friends over, and they're your friends, but it's not their house. So they leave the cabinet open, they track mud on the floor with their shoes because it's not their house. And what we need is, in terms of policing, folks that their house is their community. So they shut that cabinet, they take their shoes off and really give even more dignity to the community they serve. To talk about when we have to get more Black folks in homes. I believe I'm the only one on this stage, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I recently bought my house within the last few years. So I know this market, I know how hard it is, and I know the programs that we have to support to get folks within these homes. But part of it is making sure you got a livable wage to afford your mortgage. That's huge.
In regards to retention of Black home ownership, I think that we can have all these programs, but the bottom line is if the African American family does not have the financial resources to keep them, they're gonna lose it. So one of the things that we have to do is one, we have to find the resources to help African Americans and others who have home repair issues and no money to do that, to find resources for them so that they can stay in their homes. We're involved right now with one of the cases. And so I think we need to do that and to provide resources. We need to also increase and strengthen our local economy. We have to, it's not their fault. We need to find, not only living wage, but jobs that are going to be able to give them respect and dignity, and also allow them to be able to pay their bills. In terms of local policing, this is a topic that, I'm not an expert at. I think our chief today, when he gives us our reports, they are reports that have shown significant improvements. But part of the challenge that we had in the 2020s, 2021, 2022 was we were overcoming and just going over COVID. People were struggling, people were in dire needs, and people were making bad choices. But today, I've seen the reports, I've talked to the police chief, I think that he's doing a great job. When I asked him how much more do you need, he says, what I've got is a budget for 302, and that's what I'm gonna work with. It's not the numbers it's gonna give you the safety. We need more than the stats. We need to give people hope. We need to give people opportunities. And those are the kinds of things that we can do at the city commission level. And that's the kind of things that I think are more sustainable and long-term solutions than just a reactive, oh, let's do this type of response.
Okay, and we've come, I know there's a lot of wonderful questions still out there. We have those questions turned in here. All questions will be coming to the candidates. We're in that last portion of just a 1-minute closing where each candidate gets one more chance to say, here's why you ought to vote for me. And then we'll take some closing remarks from Katie from Garfield Park Neighborhood Association.
I'm going to say the closing remark. Okay. Thank you for coming. It's been a long evening. Some of you have been here for 2 hours. So, like 30 seconds.
30-second closing.
And then
we'll go right down.
We can stick around for a few minutes if you want to have more interactions with the candidates. But thank you to the candidates too for coming. We appreciate
it. I'm gonna work for you and I'm gonna work with you. I'm gonna listen to you and I'm also gonna talk to you. I'm gonna find resources for you, and I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna step up when others are stepping down. I'm gonna be here for you. I may not answer my phone all the time, but I guarantee you, I'll call you back.
For family, I think we should have institutions, the original institution, the family, we need to put more stuff, more information, more education, more fortune, more energy, more substance into the family. Instead of putting efforts into the first ward and entertainment, we need to be putting money into the third ward, to our high school and college graduate students.
Just a big thanks to all of you for having us out. Again, I'm John Gravsky. Please check out my stuff online. What I would say is, I love the third ward, and I think perhaps if we made any mistake here tonight, we didn't spend enough time celebrating the good. We addressed a lot of problems, and that's important. That's what we should be doing. But there's a lot of positives. Lived here my whole life. Want to continue to see the great things get even better. And I know that I'm a hard worker, but I'm an honest guy, and I'm certainly committed to the third ward, and I always will be. I'd love to earn your vote. Please give me a call or shoot me an email, and sit down and talk some more.
John, welcome me to my chronicle, but first, thank you to you all for being involved in the civic engagement process. That's what keeps these things running. Thank you to my fellow candidates for being awesome, standing up here and talking about the vision that we have. I love alliteration, like I told you. It's about I will bring my energy, empathy, and experience to provide equitable housing, a strong economy, and environmental justice for us all. As we've seen at the top level with our president, folks are ready for a new generation of leaders. Folks are ready for new energy. This is a part-time role. You need someone who's waking up every day energetic to take these things on. I've also been the one candidate up here tonight giving specific policy prescriptions because that's how we get work done. So thank you, I appreciate you. Please head over to marshallkilgore.com to see more of the folks that are supplying everyday folks and business leaders and different folks. And please learn more about the vision I have for our beautiful community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, all of you, for being here tonight. I'm just gonna say this. I'm willing to serve. I have the experience. I have done the things that people are talking about. And if you go to my website, you will see that I have a network of people who live in the third ward, former third ward commissioners, and a diverse group of people who have endorsed my campaign simply because they know that I've done the work, know what can be done, and I can listen to all of you, and that together we will create the strategy that will make the third ward a prosperous third ward. Thank you for being here.
All the candidates. Thank you to the Greater Grand Neighborhood Association, to the NAACP. Thank you to the Grand Rapids Center for Community Transformation. They all gave you information about where you can find out more. Be safe. I don't think you're going to be able to stay dry. Please drive home safe. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna leave these things here. Looks like that's where they kind of started.
Oh, good job, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh,